Good evening. I would like to call the Tuesday, May 24th, 2022 Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting to order. Could we please have the roll call?
Coulter. Hugheim.
Here.
Lewis. Martin.
Here.
Thorson. Here. Let the record note that there are 3 commissioners present, 2 absent. There is a quorum.
Moving on to item 2, the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda this evening? All right, with that, I would ask for a motion to approve the May 24th, 2022 HRA board agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Martin and a second by Commissioner Thorson. Can we have a call for the vote, please?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 3-0.
Moving on to item number 3 is the approval of the May 10th, 2022 board meeting minutes. Are there any questions or concerns regarding the meeting minutes from May 10th? If not, I would ask for a motion to approve the May 10th, 2022 HRA board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Martin and a second by Commissioner Thorson. Could we have the call for the vote, please?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 3-0.
Moving on to item 4, which is organizational business. Do we have any organizational business this evening?
No business this evening.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5, which is new business, and 5.1, 2022 Community Development Block Grant Budget Adjustment. Could we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Erica Coleman. So before you is a request for a motion to approve the 2022 Community Development Block Grant Budget Adjustment. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, announced their 2022 allocations for CDBG on May 16th, 2022, and the award allocation is $2,313 less than the draft budget estimate provided to the HRA board on March 22nd. So attached is to the staff report is a updated budget that shows a slight decrease in the administration column, and that is due to funding requirements that administration and planning activities must not exceed 20% of the grant amount, as well as a slight increase to the homeowner rehabilitation assistance activity line item. Program income estimate remains the same, and I can stand for any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the 2022 Community Development Block Grant Budget Adjustment. It has been moved by Commissioner Thorson and seconded by Commissioner Martin. Could we have the call for the vote, please?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed 3-0.
Moving on to item 5.2 is the MWF Property State Bond Application for 600 West 93rd Street. Could we please have the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Erica Coleman. I have a brief presentation here for you today. Also, Chris Stoka with MWF is available to take questions at the end. So 600 West 93rd Street, I am just showing here where it is located, as well as that is a privately owned property that would be purchased by the developer. This is a rendering from the developer for a proposal of a 5-story building over parking with 105 dwelling units, 62 covered stalls, and 55 parking stalls on grade or surface parking. And so the proposed development, like I said, is a 5-story building. It's 105 unit senior affordable housing. It will be 100% affordable at or below 60% area median income, with at least 9% affordable at 50% AMI, currently proposed at 10 units, and 30%, which is currently proposed at 3 units area median income. The breakdown of the units would be 10 efficiency and or studios, 56 one-bedrooms, 39 two-bedrooms, and as you can see, the covered parking and surface parking total 117 spots. approximately 62 covered and approximately 55 surface parking. The developer proposed is MWF Properties. They are the same developer from 108 Place and Lindale Flats. Units, 105, and affordability at 60% AMI with a focus on 50% and 30%. A total development cost of approximately $29.5 million as of right now, which is about $281,000 per unit. There is a request for a bond allocation up to $16.5 million that we are asking for the board to support the request to go to City Council for support through resolution to apply for the bonds. And then other financial commitments will be necessary for the project to come to fruition. So right now before you, the preliminary approval of bond issuance in the estimated principal amount not to exceed $16.5 million is subject to a public hearing at the council, final approval following the preparation of bond documents, receipt of an allocation of bonding authority from the MMB, Minnesota Management and Budget, and a final determination by the City Council that the financing of the project and the issuance of bonds are in the best interest of the city. This is all after submitting the application and finding out approval. And so the proposed timeline as before you today is here, May 24th, HRA Board support for bond allocation application request. June 13th, City Council approval of issuance of conduit bonds. June 24th, if approved by the City Council and submitted application, that is when the application will be due to the MMB. And then by July 15th is the date that we have notification of allocations to be known. If bonds are allocated, the developer will complete the entitlement and permitting process, identify additional funding resources with anticipation to close on this project financing and break ground by the end of the year of 2022. So here is a staff recommendation, but like I said, Chris Stoka is on the line virtually to answer any questions or to provide any additional information.
Thank you for this update. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair, this property then is currently a self-service car wash, is that right? Did I see that right or not?
The property is currently vacant.
Vacant, okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Seeing no questions? Chris?
I believe the developer may be on the line.
If the developer is online and if you have anything you would like to add or share with us, this would be a great time for that.
Hi, Chris Stoka here, MWF Properties. I think Erica did a pretty good high-level summary. This is kind of the first step in the financing, so we have still a long way to go, but we have met with city staff in the planning department to talk about the concept, and so far they've been very supportive, and we're working on incorporating some of their feedback. We have really enjoyed working in the city of Bloomington. Our projects have leased up really quickly, shown a lot of demand for this type of affordable housing. And our other two projects are family, and we look forward to the possibility of providing some affordable senior to the community.
Wonderful. Thank you for being with us tonight. It is greatly appreciated. Does anybody have any questions or anything for the developer while they're on the line? Seeing none, then I would at this time offer up a motion to support MWF Properties' request to City Council to issue conduit bonds for the proposed affordable senior housing development located at 600 West 93rd Street.
Second.
Could we, with the motion by Chair Hukim, seconded by Commissioner Martin, can we do a roll call vote, please?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried 3-0.
Perfect. Moving on, we are now moving on to our discussion items, starting with 6.1 Housing Programs Update. Could we please have the staff report?
Turn the mic on, introduce yourself. Push that. Oh, it's
Hi, I'm Robin Anderson. I work with the Bloomington HRA in the Section 8 department. I've been with the city since October of 1998, so well over 20 years. And so things have evolved, and I'm really happy to be here to kind of let you know what's been going on in our department. Things have been really busy due to new developments, and we'll kind of show you kind of that path. So thank you for having me. Okay, why isn't it not going?
So up there. There you go.
The topics that we're going to discuss is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, Section 8, HRA-owned single-family homes, home improvement loan programs, homeless prevention and response services, and home ownership programs. Okay. I might need some help.
It's an arrow.
Oh, it's down there.
Yep. Nope, she got it. Forward. There we go.
I thought I'd just kind of go over just kind of some terms in the Housing Choice Voucher Program to kind of explain kind of the increased activity and mainly the portability, but just thought I'd go through everything. A Housing Choice Voucher, tenant-based, that's just taking a payment to a private landlord on behalf of an eligible renter. Project-based is rent assistance for eligible renters who occupy a specific housing unit managed by private owners who have entered an agreement with the HRA. Properties like Indigo are conversion of the public housing units, Lyndale Avenue, which is also public housing conversion, Cornerstone, and am I missing anything? I think that's it. For the project-based agreements. Portability is very complicated, very complex. It's a port in, a port out. Is it billing? Is it, all different kinds of transactions. So it does make it tricky sometimes. Portability is participants in the HCV program that can move their voucher to another city. So if the voucher is in Bloomington, they want to move to St. Louis Park, and that other agency cannot absorb that voucher because of their budget, they're going to bill it back to the Bloomington HRA, and that's in our budget. And we can't really control much of that as far as a port out, if they're going to absorb or whatever. And then we also have our HEV vouchers that live in Bloomington that we have in our budget. But then there's also the port-in vouchers that we get. So there's a St. Louis Park voucher, issued voucher, moves to Bloomington. We can't, right now, are absorbing any vouchers due to our budget. So we're billing those back to that agency. And those are starting to increase because of the new developments that we have in the area. So, and with port-ins, you have just more calls, more tracking of payments, and so forth. So those are kind of the ins and outs of a port in and a port out. Our Housing Choice Voucher Program, there's 400, as of May 1st, 465 HCV voucher participants. 64 of those vouchers live in a different area, and we are paying for them in a different location. And so you get a total of 529 that we have in our budget. We also have, which is new this year, which we're really excited, is the Foster Youth to Independence FYI vouchers awarded. We are eligible up to 10 vouchers. Currently, right now, we have two referrals, and we've issued one here in May. And we also, in this year, also have 5 special veteran VASH vouchers awarded, and we just issued one of those in May as well. So we're waiting to see if they are successful and leasing up, which we're really excited. Talking about portability again, typically maybe like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we would average about 7 port-ins a month that we would process. And, having more opportunities, more places where voucher holders can go, which is very exciting, it does increase our numbers. And so I thought I'd take from January to May, kind of where the increased number of applications and then what we have processed. So if you can see in January up to May, it increased to 110 vouchers that we track payments and so forth. And we also, do interims and so forth. So that is really increased our number of vouchers that we administer. Maybe not in our budget, but it just keeps growing. And in our biggest months were April and May, where we had 19 that we were processing for payment. And I thought I'd show a great map that was presented at the last council meetings of all the properties that have been coming on board to the area for people with vouchers and not people with vouchers. So it's real exciting to have affordability here in Bloomington. Does anybody have any questions or any comments about the Section 8? And then I'll go to the single-family homes.
Commissioner Martin?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here. It's great to meet more of the team. And you mentioned this is complicated, so maybe this is more of an offline conversation to get me up to speed. So you had mentioned being able to absorb somebody porting into our communities based on budget constraints, obviously. I guess, how often are communities able to absorb these port-ins? I got to assume everybody's running pretty close to what their budget numbers are.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Martin, yes, currently right now, I mean, it really just depends on month to month. When our budgets are really tight, you know, we can absorb 2, maybe 1 bedrooms, or, you know, like, it's just more of a, but I would say most agencies are billing. It depends too on, you know, whether it's rural or, you know, like, you know, those types of things, because, you know, one rural voucher comes to Bloomington and we're billing, that could mean 2 participants in their community because of the higher HAP payment. But it's really kind of fluid month to month, I would say, but lately we've been just billing the vouchers because, you know, but things change. I mean, markets change, and, you know, we could get the port outs that are in a different community and they need 15 vouchers and they could absorb those. Then we would do you know, we all kind of do the same because we're all, you know, the port in is more like a reimbursement side of things. And then the port out is our budget.
And then just kind of a quick follow-up to that. So the port-ins, are they applying? They applying for those that port in availability, I guess, for lack of a better word, once they identify a unit that they would like to occupy in Bloomington, or they say, I would like to start looking in Bloomington, just with how fast these units get snapped up? I'm curious.
Yeah, they can. It's all based on the rent and our payment standard, and if that voucher can afford the rent.
Okay.
So it really just depends, you know, on numbers.
Gotcha. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, okay.
Okay. I'll go on to the HRA-owned single-family homes. We have 41 homes in our 2 programs. 20 of them are the assisted rental, project-based housing choice voucher program, and 21 are for the rental homes for future home buyers. It's a 5-year program that is geared for kind of people even between renting and owning their own home. So if somebody's on a voucher program, they might look at this program, but, you know, they have to be pretty secure to go off that voucher if they're up to the standard, and look into that as an option. As of May 1st, there were 4 houses that completed a move-out and or move-in turns. And I would say that would be on the, you know, we usually don't have that many, but so we had some turnovers. And 2 houses are in the process of a move-out and or move-in turns. And 3 houses are completing the 5-year program and will have the opportunity to purchase a home within the next 12 months. Does anybody have any questions about the HRA-owned homes? Just kind of a brief update.
Any questions? Seeing none.
Home improvement loan programs, single-family rehab, 80 applicants received and are in process, 23 loan payoffs, and 3 loan closings. Housing and environmental loan program, 1 applicant referral, and a Brush with Kindness Habitat for Humanity, 7 applicant referrals. Any questions or that? Okay. Well, that is my end of my portion. Thanks again for having me.
Stay here.
Okay.
So Wanted to go through homelessness response and prevention. So under homelessness response and prevention, the City Council did approve ARP funding of up to $250,000 for different homelessness response prevention services. I do want to add that there were, separate from that funding, 9 vouchers issued for people experiencing long-term homelessness. So I wanted to make sure you know that. And then there are 3 households within this funding, the ARP funding, that have been assisted this year with emergency temporary housing, and this is a partnership with Bloomington Public Schools. So these are students and their families. With some of this funding, as well as CDBG coronavirus funding, we have nonprofit service providers who we do have contracts with. Veep, who is providing emergency rental assistance and food shelf support. Clues, who is providing rental, mortgage, and utility assistance. CMRS and SACON, who is providing housing navigation services, so that's possibly meeting with different Bloomington households and making sure that they're getting the support that they need to know where to go, whether it's Veep, Clues, Hennepin County, or other places. And then the Homeownership Center, who is offering our foreclosure prevention, counseling, and assistance. I also want to add that we do have a request for consultant quote open for the state of Bloomington homelessness. It's a study that was approved in the ARP funding for homelessness prevention, response and prevention services to undergo a study of what is the state of homelessness in Bloomington. Any questions?
Are there any questions? I actually do have one. I'm just curious, and I'm not saying that you have this information on you, but I'm curious on how much of these services are being used, maybe post-COVID versus, right in the real heart of COVID. If we have kind of any idea of what our community is looking like at this time for the need.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Chair. So for the Bloomington Public Schools, that's now, I'm careful to say post-COVID, knock on wood. But for the nonprofit service providers, I do want to say that Veep really stepped up and was really, really helpful during the height of the pandemic. And so there was funding provided to Veep through the CDBG coronavirus funding. And what Veep has reported back is that we have a very large need in Bloomington alone, the households, that they are not able to fully address with the funding that they have, whether it's Bloomington or other jurisdictions or other sources. Mind you, before the pandemic, there was not a funding source provided for Veep for emergency rental or housing assistance. So that is not something that we normally have. And so since then, with the beginning of this year, we signed contracts with Veep, Clues, CMRS, SACON just this year. Because the funding that is coming through is the CDBG CARES Act funding, the final CARES Act funding that we got as a city, and also the DEED CDBG coronavirus funds grant that we did apply for through the city of Bloomington, and we are administering it as the HRA. But that funding was applied for and awarded to the city of Bloomington, and that's where Clues and Veep food shelf support come in. And so it's actually being used quite a bit, and I will have updated numbers within the next couple of months.
Perfect, thank you. I have one follow-up question. Since we are, as you say, and I will say that we're still in this pandemic, is there any, I haven't been paying attention, but is there any news on possible more funding going to be available through the government that we can apply for to continue supporting these programs, or do we just not know yet, maybe?
Thank you for the question, Chair. At this time, I have not been notified of additional funding to assist households from impacts due to the pandemic. But we are paying attention and watching to see if there's any other funding that may come available, at least from the state, maybe not the federal government. I'm not sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then homeownership programs. So Homes Within Reach, WALT, we do have, under the funding that they have with CDBG that is approved, they have one home that is currently under rehab in Bloomington that they've already purchased. And so this home would be sold to an eligible household that would have to income qualify. And then there is one home in Bloomington that they will be closing on in mid-June that they do have a purchase agreement on, and they will begin rehab. And again, that will be sold to an eligible household. And then the HRA-owned lot that we have an MOU for, they are currently going out for funding, for additional funding. As they said, they would look to raise additional funding to see about doing a new construction, affordable homeownership opportunity home here in Bloomington. And so we have more to come on that later. Homebuyer mortgage assistance, the lending administration service provider request for proposals will be released to get at least 2 organizations to help administer that. And then I just wanted to add, where these are not programs we are administering, we have an increase in calls, and we are advertising and referring. So one in particular is Home Help Minnesota. This is a Minnesota housing program for past due mortgage and other housing-related expenses due to the pandemic. This is open to every last Minnesota household, therefore all of Bloomington. Mind you, this is ownership housing. The application period is very short. It is May 17th through June 17th, and that is because the state is sure they will get more requests or applications than they have funding for. This was advertised through our affordable housing listserv as well as on social media. And so you can see that under Bloomington Government on Facebook, the Bloomington page, and you can reshare that if you would like. But we want to make sure that information gets out. And then Homestretch Workshop for first-time home buyers. This workshop is going to be happening June 4th in Edina, and it's actually at the Minneapolis Area Realtors location, which is actually located in Edina. And I included the webpage. This course, usually costs $40 per household, and National Association of Real Estate Brokers, NAREB for short, which is a real estate professionals affinity group here in Minnesota, is actually going to cover the cost for the households. And so we also are referring and advertising this through social media and our listserv so that Bloomington residents and renters know about the opportunity to take this workshop. If you go to that webpage, it's PPL, Project for Pride and Living, is the partner, which we have worked with PPL years before and helping to construct some affordable homeownership opportunities here in Bloomington. They do have a list of additional dates in Edina for this workshop for first-time home buyers from June through, I think, October. So that's just information I just wanted to share so you know that we are passing the word on. Any questions?
Are there any questions? No questions. Thank you so much for this presentation. Moving on to discussion item 6.2, we have the traffic and intersection studies update. Could we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. So a little shift in topics here from housing to transportation studies. I don't know if the HRA board's gotten a transportation update before, but we wanted to keep you in the loop on some projects that are directly or also indirectly impacting the HRA in the future. So with that, we've got 2 projects I'll talk to you about tonight that are ongoing. We have the Old Cedar Avenue traffic study, and then we have 98th Street corridor study. So I'll start with the Old Cedar Avenue. This project's about halfway through the process already. There's been some work done on it, but it's a fairly smaller scale project. But in 2023, next year, Old Cedar Avenue was programmed to have an overlay project. So that's where they take the top layer of asphalt and kind of re-put that down. to extend the life of the road. And so when you're doing that, you obviously have to stripe the road after the new asphalt goes down. So they took this, engineering has taken this as an opportunity to look at whether there's a different way to restripe that road to take advantage of the existing right-of-way. So looking at that, they're also looking at intersection modifications that might happen as a result of that restriping. And when you start looking at intersection modifications, the big intersection obviously is Old Cedar and Old Shakopee Road, and how that new layout would kind of fit within any modifications that would happen. So they want to re-examine some potential layouts for reconfiguring that intersection. So that intersection has an alternative already kind of designed, but it's expected in 2027 that would be reconstructed. And right now, as we were talking about funding cycles earlier, the sooner you can start getting funding lined up, the better. So this study will kind of set up some grant opportunities that we'll be pursuing with Hennepin County. So when you look at Old Cedar Avenue, it's a moderate traffic level. There's about 4,700 vehicles to 8,600 vehicles a day, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually not a huge amount. In comparison, I'll talk later about 98th Street, has about 30,000 vehicles. So a little bit of a comparison. So with that traffic level, you can, there's some wiggle room on what we do with the striping. Along that corridor also has the Nokomis, Minnesota River Regional Trail. I kind of cut it off here, my little blocking, but it's a trail that connects down to the Old Cedar Bridge, regional trail. So it's a great amenity that we want to encourage pedestrian and bicycle use of. So along the corridor also, there's kind of a mix of uses of residential, especially as you go north, but then you get that commercial aspect at Old Cedar and Old Shock, and you have that larger intersection. So basically, the two options that are being reviewed as part of this study are to continue with the 4-lane road, alternative A up top, with some minor tweaks here and there where possible for pedestrian crossings, etc. Or what's likely alternative is alternative B, which is a 3-lane conversion. So you can see where we're not proposing to move the curb lines at all. This is just an overlay, so we're not reconstructing, so there's not really wiggle room to make anything wider. But there is opportunity to go down to 3 lanes, and then you have a center kind of turn lane. So the reason you do this is for safety. If you have a low enough traffic volume, if you have too much traffic, obviously you need throughput of vehicles. But in this case, we're in that middle range. A 3-lane conversion is appropriate here. And so it increases safety because, one, you have a dedicated turn lane now, whereas if I'm stopped and the car behind me doesn't see me, they might rear end me. Or you might have 2 cars that might be making lefts. And I think I have I'll show you in a bit, but you kind of obstructed viewpoints of the car that might be hiding behind that in a blind spot. So you eliminate that second lane that you're worrying about that might be blocked from sight. But you look at that throughput, we expect there to be minimal change in operation. One of the issues to consider is that we have some medians currently along the roadway, and those would have to be removed because the center turn lane would now occupy that. So it gets into a little bit of the design aspect. And then how that design of the 3-lane to 4-lane fits in with the Old Shakopee and Old Cedar intersection. You can see this example on the right here. This kind of also shows that same issue when you have a car that's making a left turn and another car that's making a left turn. You could have another third car kind of sneaking behind there that you don't see. So that creates an issue where you might have a potential crash. So the dedicated left turn lanes help alleviate that a little bit. For the intersection, there are 2 alternatives that are being looked at. Working with kind of the layout that's been there, but fixing some issues with that that turn lane. Right now, Old Shakopee Road doesn't have a dedicated turn lane, so you still have that kind of rear end or that visibility issue. Having that dedicated turn lane allows you to have signal phasing that might let green arrow let cars go, and other improvements upon the intersection that aren't currently there. But with a roundabout, which is another option, you do allow a lot of cars to get through that, and they don't have to stop for a light, so you don't have that issue. It works really well for throughput. And in some cases, sometimes it could be better for pedestrians because they only have to look toward one area. They don't have to look at both sides of the street when they're crossing. But in some cases, it might not be as good because you don't have a signal that's stopping the cars. So that's something that's being evaluated with. In both cases, there will be right-of-way impacts. So there will be properties that are impacted. It looks really obvious with the roundabout that it kind of takes up a lot of room, but it's a little bit deceiving on that left turn side. It still does impact the right-of-way, and there still will be private property impacts that'll have to be addressed. But it should also be noted, and this is why we're bringing this to HRA as well, because this is one of our areas that we're looking at redevelopment, one of the commercial nodes that may potentially come across the HRA in the future, a high interest in the area. So indirectly may affect your work. But the roundabout will affect access to different commercial properties in the area and how they get into the apartment building here, the Winston apartment building, and other emergency vehicle access. So there's other implications that come with that design that are being evaluated currently. But
Quick question, will there be public hearings on these two roadway options?
Yep. Yeah, so there will be, you asked if there were public hearings. Yep. So this was actually presented to Planning Commission as well, and I believe might it go to council last night, information only, and actually I'll get to that in the next steps, but this will go to public hearing. So there's really two items that are part of the study, and the first is looking at the restriping for next year. So that has a public hearing. And then this aspect will have a public hearing at some point in the future when an alternative is chosen, but it's still conceptual at this point, and until it's funded and programmed in our capital improvement plan, it's still kind of up in the air. But when it becomes finalized and programmed, it will have a public hearing as part of that. But one of the big issues that Planning Commission brought up was just ensuring that there's pedestrian and bicycle access through here because of the trail to the south. It's a great amenity connecting to the river valley and the Old Cedar Bridge, and we don't want to lose that with the residential that's to the north here. We want to be able to make sure that pedestrians can cross that intersection. So I kind of went through these larger footprint, the uncontrolled versus the controlled with the signal. But in both cases, they will improve safety and kind of mitigate issues with crashing and that visibility issue. So the next steps, refine the concepts. Part of why it was being presented is because there'll be the Highway Safety Improvement Program grant that the city will be pursuing. So we'll be looking at, and that's for the intersection of Old Cedar Avenue and Old Shakopee Road. So hopefully we'll be applying for that in June, and this study kind of influences what that application will look like, and hopefully we get funding for that intersection reconstruction. But we will have public hearings for the restriping plan, and this is expected kind of late summer, early fall, and construction for the mill and overlay project will be next year.
I have one question, if that's okay. Thank you. When looking at, especially the Old Shakopee area and part of that, would the sidewalks be taken into consideration as well? I know the sidewalks are very unsafe in that area, very uneven. So would that be part of that plan as well?
Yes, absolutely, Madam Chair. That'll that is a big consideration. The sidewalks would be reconstructed to the modern standards and make sure that they're complying with ADA. Right now, it's never ideal when they're up against the roadway, having some sort of separation or some sort of barrier, making sure there's some adequate barrier between is important. And as you know, some areas don't even have sidewalks yet, so that's part of why even with just the intersection, the turn lane option, that's why there's still right-of-way impacts or private property impacts, because it's not up to the standard now, and there will be need to widen and to make room for those sidewalks and for the turn lanes. So there will be impacts.
Thank you.
because of that. And so the other project that's a little more directly related to the HRA is the 98th Street corridor plan or corridor study. The scope of this one, it's a little bit bigger project. It'll actually take about a year to complete, so we won't expect results till next year, early next year. But it looks at intersection designs, it looks at non-motorized vehicle, pedestrian, bicycle connections. One of the goals is to identify a bike route through the corridor, connecting into other existing bicycle infrastructure, again, connecting to the river valley to the south, and hopefully thinking broader, connecting to the tunnel under 494 to create a regional connection north and south. This is obviously a major barrier to get through. And then looking at the highway interchange, which I think you've been seeing concepts for potential housing or redevelopment of the transit station, and those were really conceptual, high nature. This is really to start laying the groundwork to potentially redevelop that site in the future. So to give you a little background, as the Orange Line bus rapid transit was being completed with the station that recently opened. So it's just out the door here if you're not familiar with the area, and I should jump ahead to our corridor map. So we'll be looking basically from Lindale Avenue to basically City Hall. We want to connect the station and that commercial node to Civic Plaza, and either vehicle or pedestrian connection. So as part of the supporting Metro Transit, we completed the 98th Street Station Area Plan, identifying ways to redevelop and address pedestrian connections and just how different ways to support the transit to make sure it was a successful project. And while there were a lot of pedestrian and transportation projects identified in there, this is now the next step to kind of give that engineering modeling and design work that really needed for when you actually start to go into construction. And then, as I had mentioned, you had seen some conceptual plans for redevelopment, but right now that property was purchased with right-of-way loan acquisition funds. So the preferred alternative that exists is an interchange. It was never fully completed. We don't have a loop there right now. We have the transit station, but you can see there's an exit ramp and an on-ramp that was designed for those properties. And that's why those properties were purchased, but it was never constructed and you need a public use. And so that's kind of the history of why there's a transit station there. But the transit station is very successful, so successful that they actually have the bus rapid transit routed through there to take advantage of that. So from the city perspective, this is kind of the highest and best use for this area is to have that transit. Well, taking advantage of that, we would like to see potentially some redevelopment, so some real conceptual work had been done, but really this is the first step before we can really even have a discussion, is making sure that this concept is replaced with something that doesn't show the land being occupied for right-of-way. So this study will hopefully give us a new recommendation that meets MnDOT's design criteria and has the support of MnDOT. And once the Minnesota Department of Transportation agrees and accepts the new alternative, we can then start entering the process of how do we pay back the loan funds or work with someone to pay back the loan funds and look at the redevelopment. But really, this is the first step where we need to identify a new concept. And just to note, I don't think this design actually meets MnDOT standards today. It's a little bit of a tight loop that you would have to do. So I think everyone is excited to see what the new layout would look like. So I'm sure you're familiar with the area, but it's a large commercial node on the east, Lyndale and 98th Street. You have some big shopping centers, the Fairview, Oxborough Clinic. You've got a grocery store, the Starbucks. So a highly active area. You have the transit station that just opened. And then you have the highway interchange, which acts as a big barrier, right, for people trying to come this way towards the industrial area to the north here of City Hall, an employment center, or people just coming to Civic Plaza for whatever events we might be having. So finding ways to connect people either through vehicle or through walking or biking is an important part of this study. And so we've already had quite a bit of work done with the 98th Street plan, and then we have the Lyndale Avenue retrofit plan that had some concepts as well that are incorporated, and now the engineers are busy collecting existing traffic counts and starting to do some modeling. This is just kicked off in just about a month, not even a month ago. So we wanted to make you aware of this because of the HRA's involvement with the project, and that by fall we should have some kind of preliminary results that will then have the consultant come back and actually give a formal presentation and some ideas that they will be kind of vetting with the HRA. So right now they're collecting baseline data. You might have saw the cameras out there. They're now doing pretty cool cameras that are on sticks, and they'll do traffic counts, turning movements, and kind of give that data about where people are going, coming and going through the corridor. And then when they have that and can come up with some kind of conceptual design work and modeling based on that, they'll start doing some outreach this summer. We'll have a Let's Talk Bloomington page with an interactive map and surveys potentially. We plan to do in-person feedback with one-on-one meetings. So the consultant has a sub-consultant, Alliant. So Bolton makes the engineering consultant. Alliant Engineering is helping with the outreach, and they hired a third consultant, I believe it's EEO, that will help with kind of one-on-one discussions with different stakeholders in the area. So we'll be doing one-on-one meetings. We'll be doing kind of pop-up events, potentially at the farmers market or other events that might be going on in the area. We'll be doing surveys, and then potentially even just going to the transit station, asking people how do they use the corridor to help guide some of those design works. So they'll create some concepts and kind of, again, some open houses to kind of choose what the best concepts are, and we'll bring that back to HRA Commission, Planning Commission, and Council to kind of that preliminary as we work. And that'll be kind of fall time, and then they'll kind of refine that some more and bring it back for kind of final design and final recommendations in early spring next year. So with that, I can open up for questions. We have Kirk Roberts on the line too as well. He's the engineer. I just play an engineer on TV. I'm a planner. They like to joke that planners like to pretend we're engineers.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes, Commissioner Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, just kind of real quick. So I noticed, I think it was orange circles on there that said possible trail alignment over 35 there. So would that be, if we're potentially building bridges across 35 in addition to whatever we do with the existing bridge, is that all financed as one giant package, or we'll be applying to say, help us make this trail connection as part B of this?
Yep. Madam Chair, Commissioner Martin, I think that's very conceptual at this point. Okay. I think what that looks like, it's unknown. there's still life in that bridge. But then you weigh the costs of doing a dedicated trail, which I think might not work, but maybe there's some work that can be done on the bridge to accommodate kind of an on-bridge trail. So it's still very high level, but I think, I'm not sure where they will go with that. But I do know that that bridge still has some life in it, and then maybe this study kind of says, hey, the next bridge needs to have this design feature to make that work, because I think there are some issues with doing just a dedicated trail. For one, you have to kind of connect into a network, but I think there's some space issues as well, because on the south side you're going to have the existing station, which kind of puts constraints because we have buses going through there, and then on the north side you have that loop, the loop entrance ramp, which then you have to design a bridge to go over that. So I envision any sort of trail connection would be on the existing bridge itself, or kind of future design to make sure there's some sort of dedicated pedestrian area.
I was just thinking with the 494 project and the pedestrian bridges that we're talking about for part of that, that's an undertaking. So that makes sense. Thank you.
And the 494, there are some constraints there, but they're able to kind of build it up. There is enough room on both sides to kind of do that switch back up to get to a height above it, whereas I don't know that we have that room here with just where the entrance ramps are designed currently. But maybe in the future there is that opportunity to do that. So.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner
This is
Thorson?
not so much a question as a comment, but getting back to the old Shakopee, old Cedar, I go through parts of both Richfield and Edina frequently where they have roundabouts, and I would just comment, they seem to be doing a pretty good job of accommodating pedestrians and getting the attention of drivers so they stop when a pedestrian approaches. And I rather like them because I don't like to sit at signs, but I think they've done a pretty decent job with pedestrian safety.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing them. Thank you very much for this presentation. It was very informative.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I do want to add that Mr. Palermo did mention the HRA's involvement in 98th Street Station. I just want to remind the commissioners that that was a application for funding that the HRA board did approve, and we did receive for this study in particular. But I also want to just say if Mr. Roberts, Kirk Roberts with engineering, traffic engineering, has anything to say, he is on the WebEx.
The only thing I had to add was, Mike, you did a great job. I want you to come over to traffic engineering quickly, please.
Wonderful. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Roberts? No, hearing none. Okay. We can. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time. With that, with no other questions or comments, I would like to move on to discussion item 6.3, which is commissioner questions and answers. Do we have any questions or anything we need to be updated on right now?
I just have one brief update, very brief. The last meeting, Commissioner Coulter did mention about the HRA board legislation request, which was passed by the House and the Senate, and the governor did sign it into law on the 19th. So we do need to follow up as a board and have a discussion regarding our bylaws that do need to be updated to reflect going up to 7 commissioners, and then if those seats were to be for specific populations, what would that look like? And to have that discussion, update bylaws. So more to come on that.
Wonderful. What great news. Thank you for sharing that, Administrator Coleman. If there's no other questions or comments, I would look for a motion to adjourn the May 24th, 2022 HRA board meeting. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Thorson and a second by Commissioner Martin. Could we please call for the vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The meeting is adjourned at 6:54. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.